a free trade, zero tariff deal with the European Union. We announced it here on talkRADIO on Friday. Parliament will support it. Sir Keir Starmer will support it. But the architect of New Labour, Alastair Campbell, says he must not. And he joins me now. Alastair, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You obviously are the architect of New Labour. Keir Starmer, all he really wants to do is rid himself, doesn't he, of the ghost of Brexit, which was such a damaging issue for Labour in December of last year. All he's trying to do is do what you did successfully 3 times, which is to win an election for Labour.
Well, look, there's nothing wrong at all. In fact, it's one of the prime goals of an opposition leader is to try to win an election. My worry, actually, is whether this will help him do that. I mean, that's one of my many, many worries. My main worry is that I think this, no secret that I think Brexit's a complete catastrophe. I think this deal actually is really bad for the UK. And also, Keir is saying today that let's, kind of draw a line under the issue of Europe and our relations with Europe. That's not going to happen because of so many of the loose ends that are in the deal. So I think that, yes, I agree that he's, in terms of a political strategy, I can see why he might think this is the way to do it. But I think actually that itself is very misplaced.
Now, Alastair, I know you were not the biggest cheerleader for the Corbyn regime, but it's very clear that Labour not accepting the Brexit result is what stopped you guys now being in power.
No, I think it's way more complicated than that, but it's also part of it is more simple. I think that there's not a single Labour MP or candidate who doesn't know that on the doorstep, that famous phrase on the doorstep, the issue that came up again and again and again wasn't so much Brexit as it was Jeremy Corbyn's leadership and the feeling that he couldn't be Prime Minister. Now, I accept that the referendum having happened and I was very much part of the attempt to try and get a second referendum. And I've never hid the fact that I hoped if we got to that, we could stop Brexit. I accept that there was a democratic fault line going through that, if you like. But one of the reasons I'm so kind of angry and frustrated about what's happening today is that I actually think if you track back through this whole process, it's been profoundly undemocratic. The fact that the referendum was won on let's not beat about the bush, quite a lot of untruths and lies. The fact that at every stage since then, Johnson has, said that, for example, we will not be leaving the customs union and the single market we are, won't be coming out of Erasmus we are, won't be selling out fishing we have, won't be making the Northern Ireland subject to a different regime we are. And yet, we now got this £1,246 page agreement.
It's probably quite heavy as well, I'm sure.
Which is going to go through in a day. I find that profoundly undemocratic that, an 80-page bill is going to get, next to zero scrutiny before on, the 1st of January, our lives will change forever.
Well, I don't think lies have ever not been told in the run-up to a public vote, Alastair, and you must agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
You've faced off to the Tories, over multiple elections, and I'm sure you felt that they were economic with the truth every time. But Tony Blair prevailed at that point.
Listen, sorry, let me come back. This is a different scale. When you say at the, during the referendum, for example, and I accept that during the referendum campaign, there were 2 terrible campaigns. It was Project Fear against Project Lies and Project Lies won. I accept that. But I think if you look at Boris Johnson's record, even in the last few weeks, where statements are made which are then totally contradicted by an agreement that he reaches, and then because he's got such a fairly powerful body of support in the media, not least people like yourselves on this issue, I accept not on COVID.
Well, I'm a Ramona myself, Alastair.
No, I know.
But I just responded to the result of the election. Not the election. Forgive me. The referendum. The fact that we voted to leave. I just accepted it because that's how democracy works. And Project Fear. You're right to mention that. We were told the economy would go into meltdown. None of that has happened. Nobody's got a crystal ball. We don't know how Brexit will play out. But the bottom line is, lots of Labour voters elected Boris Johnson on a 3-word campaign, which was get Brexit done. So you actually got your second referendum, and it happened in December of last year.
No, but the reason why, for example, Margaret Thatcher opposed referendums is because actually we are a parliamentary democracy. Now, I accept, look, I don't disagree that the election gave him a mandate. I accept that. because that is our system. But I also think you have to agree with me that the promises that were made for this deal have not been met. The promises that were made at the referendum have not been met.
Which promises? It's a world. I mean, I speak as a Remainer. It's an amazing deal. It is zero tariff, zero quotas, access to the single market, and we don't pay a penny. We've got our laws back. We've got our money. We don't have the jurisdiction of European courts. We are free, Alastair. And that's what Labour voters wanted, and that's why they had to hold their nose and back Boris.
No, a lot of people vote for lots of different reasons. Some people voted because they thought that Boris Johnson would do Brexit and they wanted that to happen. Some people voted because they felt Labour had lost touch on other issues. A lot of people, voted because they couldn't imagine Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. So it's more complicated than just to say. And this thing about the red wall, so-called, I spend a lot of the time in the north of England. I know as many people up there who are as angry about Labour's position on this and as angry about what Johnson is doing as there are down here in nice NW3. So it's much more complicated than this kind of red wall cliche that people put out there. But my point about where we go now, you say that we can't have a crystal ball. By the way, tariff-free, quota-free, it is not frictionless trade. I don't know if you saw the guy on Sky News last night. I didn't even know there was a kind of eel industry, right? But a guy on Sky News who was virtually in tears saying he voted leave, and if he'd have known that he was actually going to destroy his business. Now that's going to happen to an awful lot of people because frictionless trade is not happening. And so I think that...
Well, friction cuts both ways. If there's friction for us, there will be friction for the EU, just as a deal was agreed because we needed trade to go both ways. And you will see the same with the customs arrangement. And yes, there will be teething problems, but clearly protocols will be introduced. I'll quote the chairman of Tesco, who said prices will not increase and that we're really getting a bit our knickers in a twist over this.
Well, we'll just have to wait. On that, we'll have to wait and see. But this is the first time where you've done a trade deal, the purpose of which has been to erect trade barriers. Let's just understand that is a very unusual thing to do. And also there's a bigger picture here where Keir Starmer's got an interview in The Guardian today where he says that, our relations with Europe, they're now kind of a thing of the past. We've got to look forward, focus on the health service, focus on the economy, etc. The fact is, we are in an interconnected world, whether we like it or not, and our relations with the rest of the European Union, they're going to matter whatever. And I just feel that, we're making ourselves as a country much, much weaker. And you look at let's see what happens on services, but I don't think we're going to come out well.
Well, we got nothing on services, Alastair, whilst we were in the EU. Absolutely diddly squat. We got nothing on services whilst we were in the single market. We've been trying to negotiate over services for decades, and it hasn't happened. It's been a fruitless exercise. Ultimately, nobody said that this deal would be possible, that you would get access to the single market without having tariffs and without paying money in. We have got our cake and we're eating it, Alastair, and it tastes good.
You've done your monologue, okay? Let me just get a word in. You say that nobody said that this could be done. They said that we could have our cake and eat it. They said that we would not come out of the customs union, the single market. They said we would have the exact same benefits.
It was patently clear we would leave. It was patently clear we'd leave the single market. How on earth would we stay in the customs union, which means no trade deals? It's pretty clear, and I did not support leave, but I accepted the result. The sell of Brexit was independence from European courts, trade deals with the rest of the world, and our borders and our money back. And job done. Well done, Boris.
Well, if that's what you think, that's what you think. But I'm simply saying to you...
What's bad about the deal? I can't find a bad thing about it. Well, everyone loves it.
Have you read it?
Apart from like 3 Labour MPs.
Have you read it?
I have not read it. I'm waiting for the audiobook. But the thing is, Alastair, it's pretty clear that it passes the sovereignty test. I spoke to one of the country's leading commercial barristers yesterday on this programme, and he said the bottom line is it restores sovereignty to the country, and it doesn't take a genius to work out that we can strike trade deals with the rest of the world because we already have 30 trade deals upon which the ink is barely dry. It's happening, and it looks pretty good, global Britain.
Honestly, I really am shocked that somebody that that you've just bought this kind of wholesale.
Well, tell me why I'm wrong. What's the problem with the deal?
Listen, can I just get a word in?
Go.
What I strongly recommend you do, you come on here as a broadcaster that tells people what to think about COVID and Brexit.
Far from it.
And you now, yes, you do. I've just listened to
I
your
elicit the views
COVID.
of my audience.
I've just listened. Well, that's if you think that's what your job is, you carry on doing your job. What I suggest you do, as somebody who sits there pontificating, go and read the deal and then come back to me and tell me that you think it's any good. When there are parts of it that are worse, they go on about a Canada trade deal. There are parts of it that are worse than what the Canadians have got. There are parts of it that are worse than what the Japanese have got in relation to the European Union trade deal.
So tell me, educate me. I'm all ears, because the fundamentals are very, very clear.
For example, if you go and talk to people in the medicines and chemical sectors on rules of origin, they are going to find that they're trading on worse terms than the Canadians are. Because the European Union has decided that because we're right next to them, and this is a legitimate point, I think, from their perspective, that they have to be a little bit more careful about our sector getting into theirs. So that's just one very small example. There are tons of them in the 1,246 pages, and I strongly recommend, you can do your little jokes about Audible if you want to. I really think somebody in your position, rather than just rely on reading the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Telegraph, go and read the damn thing, and then come back and tell me whether you think it's a great deal.
It's pretty clear that what we were promised in terms of Brexit, this oven-ready deal, was oven-ready. It has surpassed expectations, and the country is ready to move on, Alastair. And it's very important that if Labour is going to get back in power, they've got to accept Brexit too. It's taken 4.5 years. When is the Labour Party going to accept the referendum result of 2016? Because until you do, you will never get back into power.
Well, listen, I'm not in the Labour Party. If you may remember, I got expelled from the Labour Party because of my opposition to the policy on Brexit. Look, what you can't do, this is like when I saw somebody said the other day that Labour supporting this deal because they say the only other option is no deal, which is not true, by the way, because no deal cannot happen because the Tories are going to vote for this, including the European Research Group. But the fact, this idea that because you have we lost, my side of the argument lost, that does not mean that we all have to agree that what the government is doing is the right thing. That's like saying you never vote against a budget because the only other alternative is not to have any tax. I accept the result of the referendum. I will never, however, stop saying, because I believe it to be true, that it was won on lies. I will never stop saying that I think it's part of a much bigger right-wing, actually quite hard right-wing agenda to change this country, excuse me, and do things that they
are all those Brexit supporters in the north, are they right-wing? Are they hedge fund managers?
No, that's why this is what you do. Because you don't want to focus on the substance of the argument. I
want to focus on the voters and my audience.
Yes, I know you want to focus, but when you're trying to say that what I'm saying is that all those people are very right-wing, a lot of them are not. I am saying a lot of the people who are driving this Brexit project, they are ideological, they're the radical right, they want to do things in this country that even Mrs. Thatcher couldn't do. And that is why so much is at stake on this. And that's why it is wrong, in my view, that the Labour Party are basically saying, let's just give up on the debate at all. Yes, the referendum was lost. Yes, Johnson got a majority. That does not mean that somebody like me is ever going to support what he is trying to do to this country.
Alastair, a real treat to have you on the show, and thank you so much for sharing your views. Alastair Campbell is the former Director of Communications for Tony Blair, the architect of New Labour, a man who helped Labour to achieve power 3 times, 3 landslide election victories. And his suggestion, if he had the ear of Sir Keir Starmer, is that he must reject this vote in Parliament today, which will approve the Brexit deal with the EU.